Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Open Rants. I am Jacob Craig, and if you've never seen this show, what it is this is a series that's usually exclusive to our Patreon, where I rant about a certain topic, usually comedy related, with no takes, no cuts, no edits, no time to gather my thoughts, just a rant to get stuff off my chest. But this one is a little special. It's going to be a little longer because I have a lot to unpack here. I have a lot to get off my chest, and this isn't going to go exclusively to the patrons of our podcast. I'm going to put this out to the world because I want the world to know everything that I'm about to say about this man. Because what this episode is about, it's about my beef with Mark Simmons. It's about why I don't like this guy. It's about the bone I have to pick with him. It's about the person that he thinks he is that he's not. The person he portrays to people on the outside versus the person he is in your DMs is just completely different. And I'm trying to expose that to people. All right. So we're going to start from the very beginning. We're going to unpack this whole beef. I've never liked Mark. We've had public spats before. We've just never really gotten along, for whatever reason. And it's probably because we've never been friends. My introduction to him was that he was bandmates with my older brother. So my older brother, for a short time, was the drummer in Touch Biloxi, which if you've ever seen Mark, he might as well just name his band Touching Kids in Biloxi, because he looks like freaking fat Jeffrey Dahmer. It's a horrible name for a band when you look like that. My brother was the drummer for that band for a while. And, I would hear these horror stories from him about showing up to band practice and Mark would be high on mushrooms. He would be so high on drugs out of his mind that he would go get in the closet and he would like film himself on his phone trying to escape the closet. Like, it's not that hard. You open the closet. Like, I don't know what kind of drugs he was doing, but it's the kind of drugs that make you forget how to turn doorknobs. That's how this guy kind of is all the time. I mean, he has some serious problems. I don't know if he's ever gone to rehab before, but he probably should. Even if he's gone, he should probably go back. Like, it wouldn't hurt. You know what I mean? Just get a double dose going of the rehab that you need. So he's always had problems, and our relationship never didn't start as a friendship. It started as sort of a business partnership, right? Because he booked me as a comedian to do comedy on one of his birthday shows, right? And you all probably know about Mark's big blowout birthday shows where he has 10 bands play and he doesn't pay any of them anything, doesn't even get them a free bar tab, just for him to, get too drunk and then leave the party early. Like, I've seen this man have to call his mother to come get him from a bar and take him home halfway through his own birthday party. And so the bands you brought to play this concert, they're playing to nobody at this bar now. The birthday boy's not even there because you got too high and you dropped your phone and broke it, and your mama had to come get you so you don't run into the street and get hit by a car. I mean, this is all stuff that I've witnessed with my own eyes. So the first show, right, he books me and a couple other comedians to do comedy, which, cool. I like it when, musicians and comedians come together to do shows. I think that's really beautiful. I think we should support each other more. I really like a lot of the local musicians on the Mississippi scene, and I hope they like me. I mean, I mess with a lot of them, but not Mark Simmons. And here's why. Because, the first time he books comedians for his show, it's me and a few other people. And I do pretty well on his show. And I had never done comedy before. This was my first time ever doing comedy. And I did pretty well. And some of the other people on the show did not, right? Like, he also booked Jason Robbins for the show. And it was also Jason Robbins' first time doing comedy. And so he he was telling everybody about how good I was and all this stuff. And I was like, wow, thank you. That's awesome. And then he takes me into the bathroom of this place. And he starts talking about how bad Jason was at comedy. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, he was really bad. I don't know if he's gotten any better or not since then. I mean, it was really, really bad. And that's probably still the level he's on. But yeah, like I know it was like everyone knows it was bad, but he was dog talking him in this bathroom, dude. And it was just me and him there. So it's my word against his on that, but I'm telling y'all, like he was, he was wishing bad things to happen to this man. And then not long after that, what happens? Jason Robbins gets divorced. And was that because of what Mark Simmons put out into the world? Like, I'm not one to say that, but it is. That's definitely why that happened. I mean, Mark Simmons is definitely responsible for Jason Robbins' divorce, and I would stake any amount of money on that. So he doesn't treat these comedians the same way he treats the musicians, right? And for the next birthday bash or whatever, he wants an expanded comedy portion because of me, because he likes me so much. Like, I'm so good at comedy, I'm so funny. And these are all his words that he's telling me. I'm not telling you people this. This is what Mark has said to me. He said, you're so funny, you're so good, I mess with you so hard, I want more comedy. And so I book a bunch of people for his show. And then what happens is Mark says, all right, I'm going to pay you this time. Because at the time, I'm a professional comedian now. I'm getting paid. Like, I very rarely will do shows for free. If you ask me for the favor, I'll do it. If you ask me man to man, hey, I can't pay you, but I like you, and I like you to do some comedy, I'll do it. But if you're going to have me booking people for you, those people got to get paid. I mean, I'm not, unless you want me to book just the worst open micers of all time, but I don't do that. I book good comedians. If you watch our podcast, you know that I know good comedians. So he tells me to book all these people, tells me he has a budget for me, and then he gives me $75, right? And what he tells me, after saying he wants expanded comedy, he wants all this, he's going to pay everybody, he says, here's your money, do whatever you have to do, or tell these people whatever you have to tell them for you to be able to keep this money. So he's expecting me to pocket all this money and not pay the comedians that I just booked to do the same amount of work that I just did. So what I did was I gave everyone $15. All right, that's the best that I could do. I walked home with $15, gave everyone else $15. And I don't know how much Mark got paid for that night, but I know that none of the bands did. That's all that I know. So, I mean, this guy talks about how supportive he is for musicians, supportive he is for comedians. I mean, where's that support at? It's on social media. Cool, dude. 30 people watch your podcast that just ended. So you're talking up all these musicians to 30 people, and most of them are probably other musicians that already know about them. And then you're not paying them and making them do hard work when they're good enough to get paid. I just don't mess with that, man. And let's talk about the podcast, right? WFU with Mark and Simon. Let's talk about it. I was the first ever guest on that podcast. And this is one of the biggest reasons I dislike Mark. This was one of our biggest public spats. I was the first guest on that podcast. And when you book me as a guest on your podcast, I'm not boring. I'm a comedian, man. I give you comedy. I give you a podcast to remember. I'm a good podcast guest, right? Like I'm not some local musician that knows 3 chords, that talks like they have CTE, that's going to just sit there and be weird about your questions. I'm not some weird internet meme lord personality that, is going to use up all of his internet to have a weird Zoom background and then not, you're not even able to hear him on the episode. Like, that's not who I am. Like, I mean, this was a good way to start your podcast. So we do this podcast and they don't release it. And there's no bigger slap in the face to me than for me to spend my time filming something for you with the only promise of being I get to promote my stuff for 5 seconds at the end, for you to just not release it. And that's one thing to do that once, because they invited me back on again to remedy the situation. And then again, they lose the audio because they're not good at podcasting. They're not even doing a podcast. It's only on YouTube. That's why 30 people watch it. That's why they had 2 Patreon supporters. So you have me back on your podcast, and then it doesn't get released again because you lose the audio. And of course I'm mad about this. I'm upset. I put in a lot of work on both of these episodes. Like, I put in work like I would in a comedy set. But to remedy the situation yet again, to make myself less mad at Mark Simmons, I invite him on the biggest episode of our podcast. Episode 69 of Open Micers was the biggest spectacle of our podcasting history. We had several pop-in guests that had been, previous favorite guests on our podcast. And then we capped it off with an interview with Jason London. And then me and Jason bantered at the end, right? So it was a perfect combination of what everyone loves from our podcast, as well as interviewing, frickin' Randall Pink Floyd from Dazed and Confused, dude. I mean, does he get to do that? No. He gets to interview local media personalities who are having a mental breakdown live on his podcast. That's what he does. And we interview Jason frickin' London, dude. We interview mall rats. That's what we do. He's a mall rat. So I invite him on. And I explained to him that for this to work, you have to be on the Zoom call at this time by the minute, because we're going in 10 to 15 minute intervals. So if you're not on the Zoom call by the minute, we're skipping over you and you're not coming on. And he agrees to this. And then he decides to just not even attempt the thing altogether, which is fine. That's no skin off my back. You just don't get to be a part of a really cool podcast episode. But then he gets upset that he was bad with his time and missed his time on our podcast. So he wants us to do a whole nother episode with just him and Pepper Goins, who is also horrible at time management. They both missed their slots on that podcast episode. And I said, sure. What do I have to lose at this point? Keep in mind that every professional outing I've had with this person has gone awry. Awry, if you will. It's gone bad. But I'm giving him another shot for another professional outing. And he comes on the podcast, and from the minute he enters the Zoom call, is screaming over everybody. Just screaming, trying to do comedy bits, screaming over everybody. But he's not good at comedy. He doesn't know what comedy is. I saw him at an open mic one time, and he just tried to freestyle rap his jokes, and no one could understand him. That's why he has the nickname Mushmouth. Frickin' mush-mouthed potato, dude. But is that right? Mashed. I don't know what I was going for there, but you can't understand him, and he has the body of a potato. And he was bad at comedy too. I mean, he tried it for a while. And so he comes on and he's doing what he thinks these bits are in a freestyle rap format. And I remember the cook came out of the kitchen and started like scream cursing at him because he was doing this song that he apparently stole. He stole this song. It's called Hufflepuff Puff Pass. He stole it from somebody. And I remember the cook at this open mic coming out screaming at him like, "I told you never do that fucking song again here." And I don't know who he stole it from, but I mean, he's still doing it. That's still what everyone knows him from. But he comes on our podcast and he starts yelling over everybody. And we can't release it. We have to end it early. So at the halfway point of our podcast, we just cut him off. We're like, you have to go now. And I'm mad. I'm very angry. And I let him have it on the episode. I talk about how horrible he is at time management, how I've given him every opportunity to make up for his bad professionalism, for wasting my time on so many occasions, so many hours of my life wasted on this person. Just giving him chance after chance, because he gave me one chance one time. And I've given him, 8 at this point? 8 chances of him wasting my time? And then he asks for us to pull the episode down after he had missed his initial meeting, after we had gone out of our way to do another episode for him. He asks us to take it down because I share my opinion on why he is so unprofessional and how it gets me a little hot under the collar. Okay? So I'm starting to paint the picture here now, right? This guy, he says he respects musicians and comedians, but he doesn't. He doesn't respect comedians. That's why he thinks that he can do what he does at a comedy open mic and be successful, because he has no respect for our art form. He doesn't really respect musicians. He doesn't pay y'all. He books you and then doesn't pay you. If you did that in comedy, you wouldn't be able to work anymore. You wouldn't be able to book rooms anymore. You have to pay people if you're making them work for you. All right, you can't have somebody expecting a paycheck. You can at least give them a bar tab. You know what I mean? You can at least share some of Mark's famous magic mushrooms with them. You get what I'm saying? You get the picture I'm painting here. All right, every professional outing I've tried to have with this person has not gone well. And then here's where we get to where the beef really stems from. This is what really did it for me, and this is what really makes me dislike Mark as a human being. He asks me to do frets for pets, right? Which I'm more than happy to do. I'm more than happy to do anything for charity. I'm more than happy to lend my time and my talents to this organization. He books me for it, and I specifically ask him, I say, hey, what's the rating for this show? Because, it starts early in the day. There might be kids there. Is it PG-13? Is it PG? Because I can do that. You just have to let me know. And you have to let me know ahead of time. And he says, no, R-rated. Let it all fly. Do whatever you want. Cool. I'm going to do my jokes that work well in a comedy setting that I know work well. And so I go and do frets for pets. And I start doing my jokes while it's light outside. While there's kids there. In a setting where people are probably expecting a PG-13 show. And they're off-put by my comedy because they weren't expecting a hard R rating, but that's what I was told to deliver to them explicitly. And his co-showrunner even asked me beforehand, hey, what kind of show are you planning to have out there? And I said, a hard R rating, because that's what Mark Simmons told me to deliver. He told me to deliver a hard R rating to these people. And he said, I would really love a PG-13. And I said, well, it sounds like Mark's screwing you over too. Because if you wanted a PG-13, you should have at least told me yesterday. So I can curate a new set for you, because I don't do PG-13 regularly. I say whatever I want. So if you want me to not say whatever I want, give me at least a day's notice that I have to clean it up to a PG-13 or a PG or a G. I'm fine with that, but give me a day's notice, not 5 minutes before I go on stage. So Mark Simmons has set me and this event up for failure, and I tell him this, and he tries to make up for it again. He always tries to make up for it. He is actually a very sweet man, because he always tries to make up for his mistakes. He's just a babbling idiot. I mean, he is such a babbling idiot that he couldn't even be like a movie henchman. Like a goofy, zany, like 80s movie henchman. He would be too dumb to do even that. So it's not his fault. He's just an idiot. He tries to make up for it. And he says, look, you can present the next person, the next musician. You can get up there and you can introduce them. I say, fine, I'll do that. And so, when the band that's playing finishes, I get up there with a clipboard and a piece of paper that has the set list on it that Mark Simmons provided to me. And I go into my hosting mode. I start talking like a radio announcer. I start hyping up the band that was already up there. I read off some sponsors, and I start to introduce who's coming up next. And then Mark Simmons jumps on the stage, and he says, Jacob, what are you doing? And I told him, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do. And he said, I never told you to do this. How did you get that clipboard? Get off the stage. Well, the clipboard has your name on it, Mark. You gave me the clipboard. You told me to introduce Skinny Bragg. You told me to do all these things, and then you jump up on stage and act like I just took it upon myself to be the host and make me look like a fool. You made me look like a fool in front of all of these people. And Fresh for Pets is a heftily attended event. You made me look like a fool in front of all these people. Further made me look like a fool because I had already gone up there and I had already bombed. Because they don't want to hear that kind of comedy at 4 p.m. And I don't blame them. But I was not told this. So you made me look like a fool twice. And then Skinny Bragg performs. And he at the beginning of his performance, he says, fuck all you bitches. That's how he starts. Just starts insulting the audience. And I can see Mark's co-showrunner just looking at him in disgust. Just how dare you not tell these people what they can and can't do here? This is for charity. This is for puppies and kitties. And you book this guy who's going to come up here and go, fuck all y'all bitches. And he's not even good. Because you don't know what good music is, Mark. Just like you don't know what good comedy is. I mean, your rap style it sounds like you have a concussion syndrome. I don't know what your influences are, but I feel like every time I flush a toilet, it's the beginning to a Touch Biloxi beat. We have this segment on our podcast where we play our intro music that Mark wrote for us. And we get our guests' take on it. Actual famous comedians, actual, good podcast guests. Not the kind of people you'd see on WFU. And across the board, they hate it. They say it's the worst theme music they'd ever heard in their entire life. They wish it had ended sooner. And I don't know what further evidence I can present at this point about Mark being just an unprofessional, untalented buffoon. And you all are defending this man in public forums after he's done all of this to all of these people. He divorced Jason Robbins. He made everyone on Fresh for Pets look like a fool. And it's not Skinny Bragg's fault that he was not told that he couldn't immediately go up there and insult an audience, which is such a pro move to do as a professional musician. Just go up there and go, fuck all y'all bitches. He didn't tell him he couldn't do that. That's Mark Simmons' fault. It's Mark Simmons' fault for booking him for a charity event. And it's his fault for booking me for a charity event. Because in many ways, I'm the Skinny Bragg of comedy. I'll go up there and do a hard R performance. But anyways, I've wasted too much time on Mark Simmons yet again. I hope you all understand now why we have such a beef and disdain for each other. You know, the horrible situations he's put me in, all the times he's left me with egg on my face. And I hope that you all go stream all of Mark's albums on SoundCloud, because that's the only place you can find them. SoundCloud or YouTube. I hope you all go listen to all of them, because you all deserve a good night's sleep. You all deserve to listen to the most boring, unentertaining, borderline garbage music that has ever been made. And I hope that you enjoyed this rant. I hope that you send Mark a message. Tell him what you think about him as a person. And I'll see you guys on the next one next month.